Hey.
We're here today with episode, who knows what number this will be. I think it's coming out sometime in January. Okay. With Kaija.
Hi.
Our friend, I suppose. It's weird because you're an adult, so I'm like,
I am an adult.
If I call you my friend or like what.
Yes, I know. I am an adult.
Our sister in Christ.
Yeah.
Kaija.
Yeah.
And technically kind of my aunt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just say that.
So today we're talking about comparison with Kaija, but we'll also hear a bit of her story first, and even before that, we have our little topic thingies, our segment thingy. So that's you first.
Yeah.
For our fun thing.
You've listened, so you probably know that we do random things at the start.
Yes. I look forward to them every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, today our fun thing is... you have kids, we don't have kids.
Yeah.
But we have thought about kid names before, because that's a thing that some people do. And the question that I have is, what's an embarrassing kid name that at one point you thought in your life was a great name for your kid? But now looking back, you're like, what was I thinking? Because when I was younger and I would make lists.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know. Anyway. From a show that we watched, there was a girl named Winter, and it was spelled Winter. And I thought that it was perfect, and in all the games we played, my kids were always named that. Winter. And now looking at that, I was like, I would never name my kid Winter. I don't even like Winter.
Would it be a boy or a girl's name?
A girl.
A girl? See, I would have picked, for a season, summer.
Yes, I know.
Or, August. Or
exactly. I don't know why I thought
June.
Winter was
a horrible name. Oh, I love the name June.
But I would name my kids
so much. Anyways, I think that when I was a little younger, when I was a little child, I'm still a teenager, so I'm still young, but when I was younger, I was like, I'm gonna give my kids unique names.
And what were they?
But now I like classic names.
Yeah.
And very normal names, because that's just, I don't know, I just like it better. And I don't remember anything specifically, but Oh, you know what? One name I always liked was Oakland.
Oh, yeah.
Which in theory is not a bad name.
Yeah, I like
I just don't think it's,
you wouldn't name
practical for me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think I care a lot about names, syllabically. I think that my name lines up really well, in the number of syllables. It has a nice ring to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I want my kids to have a good ring to their names, with the number of syllables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure, I get that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, what are the names that you want your kids to be now?
I
mean, you don't have children, let's preface that.
Yes. I have a whole list on my phone, and I always see these things on Pinterest where it's these really beautiful girl names, and then what they mean, it's faith or something about God, and all these names that have a different meaning, and I want my kids to have their name to have a meaning.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know any now. I like Kiara. I don't know what that stands for, but that's also from a show. I just hear names and I'm like, yeah,
that's good.
I can't think of. Well, I said I like the name June.
Yes.
Which I really do like the name June. On very close to that for boys, I really like the name Jude.
Oh, yeah.
Which we know a little Jude.
Mm-hmm.
And...
To worship. That's what his name means.
What it means.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I know, that fits you very well.
I love that, and I like...
Praise or to worship, I'm pretty
sure.
For
boys, I like short, strong names.
Yeah.
I like Jude. I just think it sounds great.
Yeah.
I think I've also thought of Evan before.
Yeah, that's pretty classic.
I like that. I don't know. I can't think of any girl ones. I do have a list on my phone though.
Yeah. Yeah, girls' names were always, because I don't have girls, that was always the one where I was like, oh. But the girl name that I actually really like only recently, and I didn't like it for my whole life, and my mom loved it, and I was like, why on earth would you like that name? And now I love the name, and everyone's probably gonna make fun of it. It's Harriet. It sounds, I know some people are like, why would you want to name, but I think that it's so like, it's old school.
Okay, because I kind of
really
get it
cute.
because my mom and I always talk about the name Winifred.
Yeah.
And like calling her Winnie.
Yeah. But Harriet, you call him Harry?
I mean, why not? It could be cute.
Yeah, but like, there's just something about like the really
or
old
Harriet.
classic. Yeah.
Like
or Etta.
Etta, that's
like
yeah.
that. Wouldn't that be adorable?
That's cute.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Or Eddie or something like that. I just think that like the old classic names,
I think it's cute.
are very adorable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just fun.
We'll see, I guess.
Speaking of on those topics of the little things that you do, my favorite was the animal from.
Yeah?
Oh my word!
Did you look it up?
100% I did.
Yes.
And it's the cutest. What's the name of it again?
A quokka.
Pokey.
It's
Dinah.
so cute.
They're adorable.
Right?
I like.
That's why I said it.
It made my day.
So cute. They're so cute.
It makes you feel like you're actually part of the conversation. Because 100% when you said it, I looked it up on my phone. I'm like, what is this animal? And then I was like, oh my word, I have to.
Yeah.
I have to show people.
No.
I have to spread the good news.
Yeah. It's a great little guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Hearing from God. That's me.
Second one.
Apart from Galatians, I don't know, Galatians and Corinthians I haven't gone through yet, but I just recently finished reading most of Paul's letters.
Yeah.
And a theme I noticed in all of them is how he doesn't just criticize the people he's writing to for like what they could do better on. He always encourages them. And one thing I noticed that he says in every single one of the letters is like, every time I think of you, I give thanks to God. Every time I think of you, my heart rejoices.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking like, it's so easy in our society to be hateful and to be jealous of people. And I think that we should make it more of a habit in our lives to, when we see our like faith families doing really well, to be happy for them and to like celebrate with them
Absolutely.
and lift each other up. And I like that. I like thinking about that.
That's a very good point.
So that's my hearing from God.
I like
Yeah. I like
A
Paul
lot.
too. He's fun.
I would read the letters over and over.
Oh yeah, they're so good. There's have you guys read through Hebrews?
Yes, but
They're
I
not
think, like just reading words,
Yeah.
honestly.
pretty sure. I'm going to go to it now. They're not sure on the author of Hebrews. I have to just double check to make sure I'm right on that one. And it's interesting. Me and my husband have this thing that we do. Almost every night we will take time to read the word together and pray together. And we and we have just finished going through all of Paul's letters and we're on Hebrews. And we always like, I have a Bible that, like a study Bible. So they go through like who the author is and the background and the history. And I'm the author of Hebrews is unknown. Paul, Barnabas, Silas, Apollos, Luke, Philip, Priscilla, Aquila are all like suggested scholars. So we read that and then we started reading Hebrews and my husband almost immediately was like, no way did Paul write this. Because he has a style, what you were saying. He's very like how he writes his letters. And maybe he did. We don't know. It was just my husband's take on it. Where he was like, this is like, Paul is like, right away he encourages, he identifies himself too. He's like, Paul, apostle of Jesus Christ, and, right?
Yeah.
And Hebrews writes very, very differently. It's great. It's still amazing. Don't get me wrong. It's not like because Paul didn't write it, it's not good. It's an amazing book, and we have loved going through Hebrews. But it is interesting to note that he does have a style. So, and you pick it up where you actually kind of get to know Paul when you read through his
I really
letters.
love like little stuff like that in the Bible because it reminds us that it's like it's real.
It's
real
very
people
real.
writing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Who are like us.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not fictional, right? Of course it's not. But when you really get into the Word of God, you're like, these are like God's words penned by men, but like each man brings his own like unique little style to it.
It's really cool.
It's very neat to read and to see. Paul's very encouraging.
Imagine all when they write letters, then they introduce themselves as like apostle of Jesus, whatever. Imagine if when we, like, that's them, I guess not sending, like sending an email.
Yeah.
You'd be like, Kaija, disciple of the Lord, daughter of the King, or something. That'd be one way to introduce yourself.
You should 100% start doing that.
To my teacher.
Yeah.
Could you please look over this document?
Signed, Kaija, an apostle of our Lord Jesus Christ.
That's too funny. You should do that. All right,
the sponsor.
And finally, sponsoring today's episode, we'll give a big thanks to the girl that each of us see when we look in the mirror.
Oh.
She's beautiful. She was created by God. And she's perfect for this episode because we're talking about comparison. Next time you see that girl in the mirror, hype her up a little. Give her a high five. Give her a hug. Be mindful of what you tell that girl. Because if we say stuff too often, then we start to believe it. And the girl in the mirror deserves better because that girl is you.
A child of God.
And Jesus loves you and he created you to be who you are.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very creative.
So thank you to the girl we each see when we look in the mirror for sponsoring this portion of today's episode.
Thank you.
Here we go. Okay, Kaija.
Yes.
Give us a little bit about who you are.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about like my testimony.
It's actually kind of like you're introducing yourself to her.
Yeah, I really don't know Claire very well. Yeah. I'm excited to get to know you better. Because I see you at church doing worship.
Were you there at my baptism?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the first step. I'm like, everyone in the church knows me kind of now.
Yes.
Know of me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and yeah, I know you a little bit. And I've heard your story. And when I've heard your testimony before, but when you did your testimonies on your podcast, it truly brought me to tears. I'm pretty sure it's not the first time that I have cried at your testimony.
Oh.
So it's very sweet.
It was a good episode. It was a good idea.
It was a good episode.
That was great, yeah. I feel like my testimony is more similar to Kaija's. It's not quite as, mind blown. But it's not that it's not important. I was actually talking to my husband about this just recently because I was telling him about this podcast. And both he and I, who grew up in a Christian home, right, you always feel like your testimony is not worth very much because you don't have anything like shocking. But then looking back at my testimony, I can clearly see God's grace through it and his faithfulness. And I think that also comes with age.
Yeah.
Because I'm in my 30s. You just have time to make mistakes and you have time to see God's grace. You have time to be humbled. And that's honestly where a testimony really shines, is not because you do anything, but because God's character shines through you. But I guess my testimony starts as most does, those who have grown in the church. I became a Christian when I was 3 because my brother asked me, he was like, do you want to be best friends with Satan or with Jesus?
Oh my gosh.
So clearly I picked Jesus.
Yeah.
But no, when I was 10, I remember like lying in my bed thinking to myself, I didn't know what I was talking about when I was 3. I was only 3.
Yeah.
So I went downstairs to my mom. I sat on the stairs. It wasn't anything crazy or like, I just remember being very aware that I had to make this decision myself. So I think I was 9 or 10 and we just sat on the steps. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I should have been sleeping, but I had the Holy Spirit on my mind and I asked my mom if I could ask Jesus into my heart. And I would say a lot of my faith growing up is thanks to my parents. They I think nowadays, to say that you're a Christian, not a lot of people even know what that means.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And
it's just like lots of people.
Lots of people, right? From all different denominations. And I was so blessed to have a mom and a dad who really showed me what it was like to have a personal relationship with Jesus. Like, it wasn't like that he was just like that you go to church on Sunday, that Jesus was a nice guy that you celebrated at Christmas and Easter. He truly was the center of our family. And that was thanks to my parents. In everything, absolutely everything we did, it was centered around Christ. If I had a problem at school, first thing we would do was pray about it. We didn't just pray at meals. We didn't just pray at devotional time. It was constant. Just this, well, let's go to the Bible. Let's see what the Bible says about this. And, if we have to figure out where to go to do anything, we'll pray about it and we'll ask Christ first. So he was always the center of our family unit. And I remember being very shocked. I think when I have a very distinctive memory where I really saw the humility that comes with being a Christian and putting Christ first in your life when it's hard to put Christ first. And it's one of my favorite examples of also it's shaped me as a parent as well, because I have two boys. And I remember it was with my dad, and he had done some work business that wasn't bad. It was in his work, he would work with a client, and if there was another salesman who was working with that client, you had to direct them back to the first initial salesman, if I remember the story correctly. And anyways, he didn't do that. They asked for him, and instead of him directing it back, he was like, well, they've asked for me, so I'll take it on. And that's just not ethical. It's not at least that's not the correct ethics to go about in their workplace, what was kind of the undertone of the workplace. And he obviously was convicted of what he did. And so he went to the man who his coworker, and he apologized. He humbled himself. He went obviously to the customers and he apologized, and obviously to my mom. And then I was so shocked. He came to me and my brother, and he asked for forgiveness for something that had no impact on us as his children. It was just something that he didn't quite do. It wasn't even like a bad thing. He just didn't do what was right in the workplace environment. And he came to me and my brother, and he asked for our forgiveness. And I remember being shocked that my dad would be so humble in sharing this. I didn't do what was right, and I have to make amends for it. And I just had the most admiration for my father because of that experience. And it has shaped me in how I parented. Because now I just want to be honest with my children. Even when I do something wrong, it's because we're never going to be perfect. So when you go up to someone and you say, I'm so sorry for how I did that. And then you also go to your child and say, I did what was wrong. Do you forgive me? Even if it doesn't impact them. What they see is that you're governed by God. So that your integrity and your character has to flow from what God says. This is how you're supposed to behave. And I saw that clear as day in my dad. So that has, in everything, he had integrity like that. And same thing with my mom. She was just full of integrity and character. Doesn't mean that they were perfect, but they apologized and they were humble and they sought after integrity and character. So they were a huge part in my growing up years and what it actually meant to follow Christ. That you don't just say it on Sunday and then go and do something different. All the rest of the days of the week you do your very best to be holy because he calls us to be holy. So that was a huge part of my growing up years that really shaped my faith, just my parents and watching them and what it actually truly meant to have a relationship with Christ. And then typical stuff happens when you're older. You leave the house and you grow up, and then you realize, I'm actually not perfect. Not that I ever thought that I was, but you realize when you're under the roof of your parents, it was protected and they kept me accountable. But then when you leave the house, you have to keep yourself accountable. So it was a bit of a different story. And I struggle a lot with, not a lot, but I definitely struggled with certain parts of sin. And just the world looked appealing to me in my 20s in a way that it didn't when I was younger. And I think a lot of that was actually, will tie in today. A lot of that tied into me started to have anxiety in my 20s. Never had it when I was younger, but I got it when I was in my 20s. And I think it was because I dabbled in the world. And a huge part of that is the phone, which I'm sure we'll get into, and comparison and what you allow yourself to be a part of. But I really did, not that I lived an unchristian life, but I would say for sure, I dipped my toe, I pushed the boundary in lots of things, and then out of it came a lot of anxiety for me. But as always, because of that, God just is very gracious. And when you do things that are wrong, he humbles you very quickly. And for that, I'm not saying that it's good to do what's wrong. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that God will use the things that you do, and he still brings out his glory in that. And he definitely did that with my anxiousness, where I was like, he humbled me with a lot of things that I always thought, I'll never struggle with that. And then all of a sudden I was struggling with it when I was in my 20s. And instead of it tearing me away from God, I think that's one of the reasons why he allowed me to struggle with it, is because he knew that it would actually bring me closer to him. Yeah. So then I ended up really you guys talked about it a while ago, and I think it was beautiful, taking your thoughts captive. Mm-hmm. That became a huge part of dealing with anxiety for me. It's first of all, don't look at everything on the phone. You have to put limits on yourself. And I had to remind myself, this is the life that God has set for you. It's important to stay on that path. And he is gracious, and he will pull you when you get off of the path. But you definitely see the importance of, this is why we follow God. You know, when you leave the straight and narrow, it's not just fun. It's detrimental. It will destroy you. And I got a little taste of that anxiety, and it was enough to be like, no, that's not where I want to be. I want to be on the straight and narrow. So, yeah. And then for me, I was very blessed to meet a wonderful man who loves the Lord, and he's just the most amazing man, and he leads our family very well. And I have 2 wonderful little children. And the other part to my testimony, which again, I'm still kind of discovering it, is my children. They bring about in you this desire to teach the gospel and to teach about Jesus. And I want to be to them what my parents were to me. So it's a very good motivator to continue on the straight and narrow, is so that you generate the generational blessing, your kids and your children's children. I think in their children's children, it goes to the 3rd or 4th generation of being obedient to Christ. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. So our main topic is comparison. Which I see in your notes, and I also thought about it. We touched a little bit on it in our modesty episode.
Yeah, so we talk a bit about, I don't think we really go in depth. It's very brief. And we talk about comparison. But today we're going to go more into it.
Mm-hmm. I'll start by saying that I can probably speak a little bit for Kaija, but for me, comparison is a beast that I know well. And that continues to attack me.
Yeah.
Because we don't stop having problems once we know the truth of what God gives us.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning all about comparison and how to give God control of that in my life. So everything that we talk about today is everything that we talk about in the podcast really is us approaching it from this is what we know and we want to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's that. So the first point that I have is in 2 Corinthians 10 verse 12. Let me get there. And it says, "For we don't dare classify or compare ourselves with someone who commends themselves. But in measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves to themselves, they lack understanding. We, however, will not boast beyond measure, but according to the measure of the area of ministry that God has assigned to us." So what I pulled from this is that we're all so different. Each of us, we're the same, in that we're all God's children and we're all created in His image. But I saw something once that said, there is a specific way that you can contribute to God's kingdom here on earth that like only you can achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of why God has you where you are, what he created you to be the way you are. So when we think of it in that way, it really doesn't make sense to measure ourselves by how we see other people performing.
Mm-hmm.
Because when God created us, he wasn't like, okay, well, this girl has, I don't know, this length of hair, so I'll give Claire that length too. Or this girl is this amount good at, like, her academics, so in proportion, Claire needs to be blah, blah, blah. Like, we were all made in the image of God to be, and because we were made in his image, that means we were made exactly how we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't make sense. It's like, it's almost like if I tried to, like, measure out, like, the distance from my hometown to where I go to school using, like a 30 centimeter ruler.
Right.
Well, that just doesn't make sense. Like, it's going to take me forever. It's going to be exhausting. I'm probably going to mess up at some point and have to start again. Like, that, it just doesn't, the math is not mathing.
Doesn't compute.
Yeah. So we're not measured by standards that other people have created or ones that we decide other people have created. Like, because she's so good at this, I need to be too.
Mm-hmm.
We are measured by what God has said is good through his word and what he's revealed to us. And, like, at the very end, like on Judgment Day, when we're in front of God, is he going to look at us and be like, well, you were not as athletic as Kaija.
Yeah.
So, bye. That's not, or like...
That would be crazy.
Right, like, Kaija prayed this one day, like, before Kaija was having her baby, that the delivery would be safe, and you didn't. Like, that's not good, Claire. That's not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's one standard that we're measured by, one context with which we're taken, like, into, and it's how God sees us. Not, he doesn't, like, compare us to other people, too.
Yeah. And it's important also to note that he sees us as, like, Jesus Christ died for us. So if you think that your life is worth less, it's really like a slap in the face to what Jesus Christ did for you. Right? Like, he bled and died for you.
It's like saying
You
wasn't
think,
enough.
right?
Yeah.
Like, you think your worth can be measured by, like, you
Yeah.
didn't run fast enough, or
Yeah.
you're not skinny enough, or you've never talked to a boy before, like...
Yeah.
What?
None of it matters. As Solomon says, right? Everything is meaningless.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with you ladies, because I feel like comparison in this day and age is a total different ballgame.
It's hard.
Than, like, comparison when I was growing up. I had the joy. I actually really enjoy the place that I was born in, because when I grew up, I didn't get my phone until I was 21. So I lived my whole childhood and teenage years without a phone. So I didn't have social media to go to, which I think is just the worst.
Oh my goodness.
Like, truly.
I could talk for hours about it.
It's so bad. So when there's comparison as women, men too, but maybe women just talk about it more. I don't know.
I would say so.
Yeah. But I remember being very aware of it when I didn't have a phone. I was on the bus to university and just very aware. I would always look at other girls being like, oh, she's prettier than me. She's smarter than me. She got better grades than me. She's better at volleyball than me. Like, whatever it was. It really irritated me that I was always aware of that. And I caught myself one day where I was like, that's strange. Why am I always so negative towards other women? Because it happens, right? Like, Satan's like a little thief in the night, right? He's just like a roaring lion. He'll put those thoughts in your head. And I remember thinking, I'm going to stop that. And the best thing that I've ever done is encouraging, right? It's like the opposite to what comparison does. And I remember when I was in university, every time I had a thought, if I saw a girl who, like, had something better than me or whatever, instead of thinking ill towards her, I would go out of my way and I would verbally encourage her. And I'd say, hey, I noticed that you did this. That was really good. I was very impressed that you did that. Or you look so fantastic today. Like, that's a super cute sweater, or whatever it was. And every time that I encouraged someone, that little bit of that self, like, comparison, it, like, dwindled away. And then social media came up. And then it's far worse. Like, you're surrounded by that constantly.
Well, I talked about it a bit in our Power of Words episode, I think, about how I, like, the extent of my technology when I was, like, little and growing up was, like kids' TV shows.
Yeah.
And, like, sometimes my mom would let me, like, watch, like, a YouTube video, and it would be, like, how to do this craft or how to make this loom band bracelet, you know?
Yeah.
And then COVID.
Uh-huh.
And then TikTok.
Is that when it started for
That's when it started for me.
Oh.
Well, I mean, there's always been, like, spirits of, like, self-hatred attacking me.
Right.
So I was struggling with comparison and everything, like, literally as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
But the floodgates just swung open wide when I got TikTok. Like I said in that episode, I was like, I had never in my life ever struggled with, like, foul language at all.
But then.
Because I wasn't hearing my mom using that language.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the shows I was watching. It just wasn't, like... And maybe, I'm sure I heard the odd word growing up, but that's gross. Like, why do we say that?
Yeah.
And I got TikTok. Every other video, they're just casually using, like, slurs and rude language all the time. And all of a sudden, I'm noticing in my head that I'm adding, like, crude language into my sentences in my mind. What's happening?
Yeah.
Same thing happened with comparison and body image. Like, stuff that I hadn't even thought about. Like, I think the general thing maybe when you're a kid is, like, oh, that maybe she's prettier than me, or, like, maybe I like her clothes better. But, like, attacks on just such specific, like, body, like, things and, like, I don't know, just opened right away when I started getting social media and seeing, like, oh, these are the girls that are getting the most praise and love from people.
Right.
And this is what they look like.
Yeah.
So it must be connected to that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just not...
It's so harmful.
Ugh, yeah. It's horrible. And even, like, I'm actually, like, I'm happy with where I am, where God has strengthened me to be, because I set a limit for myself that, like, I didn't want Instagram. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd never want Instagram. Mm-hmm. I have Instagram now.
Yeah.
I use it to send funny reels to my friends. Like, the whole reason I eventually deleted TikTok and I put limits, I deleted having Snapchat, I put limits on, like, how much I was watching YouTube, and I did not have an Instagram for the longest time. Yeah. Because I knew that, like, I have, like, if I have that access to me, I'm going to be on it all the time, and I'm going to be seeing things that are just sending me down negative spirals. Yeah. So I'm really fortunate that I never got to a point where, like, I had Instagram so early that I could go down a darker path, and that I started on my journey with healing my comparison with God before I got the Instagram. Yeah. Because now I have Instagram and it doesn't
now you have
bother
a handle
me.
On it.
Like, I'm not tempted. Like, even if I had Instagram at the same time that I had like TikTok during COVID, I would have been on there every spare moment, like searching up these like women, whatever, who were influencers or even other girls that I knew, and like just measuring myself against them. Yes. Which is so unhealthy. Yeah. And the sad thing is that it's so easy.
Without
today.
even trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, you just open your phone and it's like, oh, this is what I need to be.
Yeah. Which is wrong, right? Because we should be opening up our Bible. Mm-hmm. And this is what we need to be. Mm-hmm. That's what's important, right? And it's a thief of time. Mm-hmm. The phone. And comparison is, what was it? A thief of joy.
Yeah, I have that written. The killer of joy.
It's the worst.
You start focusing on like yourself compared to others, but the compliment thing that you said, you've told me that before, and I actually have it written down.
Oh, I did?
Yes. Yeah. About the turning it into a compliment.
Turn it into a compliment.
And it's so helpful because it takes the focus right off of yourself, and you don't feel it anymore.
Yes, or you could also, it's the same lines of also, it's not about you. Mm-hmm. And we're not put on this earth because of our life. Our lives are not even our own. They belong to Christ. They were bought and paid for. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when we have this mentality of me, you forget that that's completely not what Christ came down here for. And he is the model. But when you compliment, I think it's actually step one. Really, we should be serving people, right? Or like at least asking God, or not just people, but serving Christ. And then he'll ask you to serve people. Love God and love others. But it will be like, okay, God, what can I do for your kingdom today? It completely takes the mindset off of your own self and it puts it back to where it should be, which is Christ-centered. And when I think too about who Jesus was, he, like, in a perfect way, his life was an example of what it really meant to be humble and selfless. And it says, where is it in Isaiah? Do you guys know the verse? Nothing, he had no physical appearance that we would be attracted to him. Is that Isaiah 50?
I don't know. We talked about, there's something in 2 Samuel.
He wasn't good looking.
Yes. No, I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? How does it go? There was no beauty or majesty for us to attract. I have to find out.
Oh no, what I'm thinking of is in 2 Samuel, and it talks about how God doesn't measure us by how we look.
Yeah, well, and there's that too.
But I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, from my experience with social media, I've had it. I don't even know when I got it.
Literally forever.
Like, it is such a trap, and I have this love-hate relationship with Instagram because for years now, I've been like, I get sucked in so deep and then I'm like, I can't, and I delete it for like, I've gone like half a year, and then I get it back for something, or to text someone, or because someone's like, hey, I sent you this reel, you haven't responded. Yep. So then I get it back, and then same thing, and it keeps repeating, and this summer, I had it gone for the whole summer.
Yeah.
Or most of the summer, and then we got it back because glory be. And now I've gotten better at regulating it, and like I go through my followers every once in a while because I find that like, why am I following them? So now I'm only following like Christians and different things so that it's still leading me back. But even then you see other Christians and you're still like, it leads to jealousy right away.
Yeah,
which is another sin.
Self-righteousness.
Yeah.
Oh, they pray more than I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So you still have to regulate it.
Yes. It's Isaiah 53. It's the suffering servant. Where he says that nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. It's in Isaiah 53 verse 2. For he grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of parched ground. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we would be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and like one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. And then, I mean, it's just an amazing verse. But he came from a carpenter. They had no money. He's born in a stable with animals and poop. Like nothing, there was absolutely nothing about him that, from a worldly standpoint, we would be like, wow, look at him. It was only because of who he was as God, right? That's why he was so appealing to us, is because of who he is as God, not any of his own, like what the world qualifies as. That's amazing, either looks or money or power or intellect or anything. He just came to save us from our sins, and that was enough for us to be so attracted to him, not because of what he looked like, but because of who he is. And I just love that, right? And that's who we should try to be like, is the fruit of the Spirit. Yeah.
And also with the comparison, it, like how we talked about, like thinking that we're worth more than what he died for, leads us back to it. So it kind of leads to pride again, which I think me and you have both been seeing more. Like every sin, you look at it and pride.
Yes.
Everything.
Well, because I had that one conversation with Kim that one time, and it changed me. I was like, she sat me down and we were talking, and I was like, you're telling me that me hating myself and thinking less of myself than everyone else is pride?
Yeah.
And I'm like, the math, what? It's not working. But then Yeah.
Thinking about it more than you see it, and you told me that, and now I see that in everything.
And I think about that all the time. Too. And even I saw something pass me the other day on like Pinterest or something, and it was like a humble woman of God doesn't hate herself. I was like, because that's something that God's working on rewiring in my mind, is that my whole life I've equated like humbleness to not liking yourself.
Yeah, like
because it means you're thinking less of yourself than everybody. But that's not the gist of humbleness.
Yeah.
It seems like it's just another trick from the enemy. Comparison, looking at people. He's done something in our brains, and with social media, he's found out a way to get so many people to hate themselves, to hate what God created.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
I saw something once that was like, the devil couldn't get to God, like he can't overpower God, he never could. He couldn't send Jesus into death. Jesus overcame death. So he comes after what matters most to God, which is his children, which is us.
Yeah.
So, like, he finds any way that's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta be on the lookout.
Yeah. I think what's one thing that we really have to also do when you do fall into comparison and thinking either less of yourself, right, or less of others. It's one or the other. I'm better at her than this, because that's the other flip side, right, is when you can think that you're greater than. I think one of the first things that we should do as Christians is you have to ask for forgiveness. Like, there has to be that heart of repentance. You can't just say to God, help me to change. That comes next. I think the first thing that you have to do is you truly do have to humble yourself in your words and ask Christ to forgive you, right? Because then that really like starts to strip down. It starts to actually dig up the roots. Because when you think about Satan can either plant or those roots of his fruit, which are terrible, or the fruit of the Holy Spirit. It's really like the fruit of the flesh or the fruit of the Spirit. And I think if we want to have the fruit of the Spirit, we have to dig up the roots from the fruit of the flesh. And the way to do that is through confession and actually say to God, I need your help. I ask for your forgiveness. And I think that's one thing that I never quite got until I was older. Because you always ask God for help. We're all going to ask God for help. It's like what most of our prayers are around. And it actually should be one of the last things that we do. Just like one of the first things that, like, when you look at God and how Jesus taught us how to pray, confession is always a part of that. And that's what truly like humbles us.
Yeah.
And when you can start to dig out the weeds and start to plant the good fruit.
And just this one, like, it leads to so much more. Like, some people might think that it's not really hurting anyone else, it's just hurting yourself. So, like, it's not hurting anyone, so it's not that bad. But then it leads to, like, jealousy and arrogance and pride and all these things. So it's not just one thing, because it leads to another.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a habit, and then it's so much harder to break.
Yeah. Well, I have that marked down, actually. James 3:16. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and every evil practice.
Yeah.
It leads to so much. And life isn't like a race. Like, you're not racing to beat someone and get the highest score or something.
Realistically, like when you're dying, like
it's just
when you're laying, you're like dying, you're thinking about how you're gonna die soon. Are you gonna sit there being like, oh man, like I just wasn't athletic enough?
Yeah, no.
No, that's not gonna matter at all.
No.
Something that I have that I've been trying to do is, it's connected to the pride thing, about how this comparison is rooted in pride, about looking at the why behind your comparison. Like, if I'm out in public and I see a girl and I'm like, oh, she's really pretty, like I wish I XYZ so I could be like her. Actually stopping yourself and taking your thought captive and being like, why?
Yeah.
And half the time I find with myself that my answer is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Why do I need to look like her? I don't know. Or maybe it could be that, like, why do you need to look like her? Maybe because you notice that a lot of people are always complimenting her.
Right.
So then you're saying that you want to be complimented more, which is prideful.
Yeah.
You know?
leads
So
back to it.
looking for the why and then taking it and translating it to what God says instead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like it literally says in the Bible that we're like masterpiece. We're wonderfully made. So why would we look at others and then like look at us and be like,
yeah,
we don't have to keep up with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It never says that in the Bible.
No.
You must keep up with others. No.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say that. And another thing that's an easy solution like that, or turning it into compliments, is like gratitude.
Yes.
It's also ties back to like anxiety too.
Yeah.
Like gratitude, focusing on what you're grateful for, it changes your perspective like so fast.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is one of the greatest things. I think we all know the verse. It's in Philippians 4, when it talks about don't be anxious, but the whole part of that is be thankful.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have an attitude of gratitude.
Yep. If you're grateful in most situations, then it's a lot harder to find yourself in sin.
Yeah, and I think that when you're grateful too, that also leads into, that is the first step of contentment.
Yeah.
Right? When you're thankful and you actually see how much God has truly blessed us with.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't focus on your lack.
Yeah. If you and then, like, I mean, you hear so many testimonies of what, like, people that in like who love the Lord. It's all they have in third world countries. They're being tormented for their faith, and that's all that they have. And they're the most content, most grateful people because they have realized the key to contentment is truly found only in Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
If you have Him, you lack nothing, and that's just where our mindset should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's all a change in mindset.
In Galatians 1:10, it says, "For am I now trying to persuade people or God, or am I striving to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ."
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the comparison can come in when maybe because of our faith we're being made outcasts or being persecuted or something, saying, well, my life would be so much easier if I was just doing it normally, quote, quote, like how other people live.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bible tells us that we're not promised an easy life,
No.
like in doing what Jesus wants us to. And following God does not go hand in hand with being accepted by the world.
Yeah.
You
In
know?
fact, if you are accepted by the world, you should probably question if you're
Yeah.
actually, am I doing what's right? I've been reading with my kids Daniel, the book of Daniel.
No way.
Yeah.
I'm reading Daniel. Or I finish it tonight. Yeah, I'm on the last chapter.
Nice. It's so good, hey?
It's so good.
Do you love the writing on the wall?
Yeah, I
Oh.
love all the stories and that, except I've gotten to the later part of the book,
Yeah.
which I read chapter 11 last night,
Yeah.
which that is, it's like trying to do a jigsaw puzzle, but you're blindfolded. It's a big prophecy.
Yes.
And like the last chunk of Daniel, like the last 4 chapters, I just do not get.
You should, do you know Matthew Mayer?
No.
He's so good. He's a pastor in New Jersey, and he does it's a commitment. Let me tell you, he does like a 40-week series on Daniel.
Yeah.
So and every series every week is like an hour long. So
wow.
it's like 40 hours of commitment to Daniel, but it's so good because
Have you done that?
I just know who he is. I have books by him and I've listened to sermons.
Yeah.
He's very good.
He's so good, and he breaks down Daniel because it's so filled with prophecy. And but it's just, so if you want to get into it, it's always, I think it's good to have someone who you trust who can lead you through that, because it is a lot. It's a lot to take on. But I was going over with my kids, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how they, it's so good, how they didn't bow down, and I was thinking about that. You know, if they had a heart of comparison, there's no way that they would have been able to stand. It's just not, it wouldn't even be, they would get down in a second. But because they just had a heart of pleasing God, obedience to Christ, that's all that they cared about. They were able to stand, not because of their own strength, but because God gave them that strength.
Yeah.
But like, it's just an amazing story of 3 men that were like in the face of literally full on death.
I saw a video, And it says that because the king was so mad at them that he had the furnace heated to like 7 times his normal strength.
Yeah.
And I saw a video that said, based on what we can understand of like what a furnace temperature might have been for them, that would have been like hotter than the sun.
Oh, really?
Or something. Like,
well, it was enough to burn the guards that brought them there.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't even survive.
Like the people.
Yeah. It's just, and then there were no longer. They're
walk in, walk
not
out.
even singed, not a smoke, nothing.
So crazy.
I get a kick out of, I don't know how to say his name. King
Nebuchadnezzar,
who
in the end humbled himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get a kick of him before he gets there, though.
Yeah, when he becomes the crazy animal.
Because it takes a few things.
Yeah.
Like, I'd see 3 men come out of a furnace alive and be like, okay.
I know, right?
This is God. Like, but it took the furnace, it took the writing on the wall, it took Daniel in the lion's den.
The writing on the wall was after I was his son.
Oh, right.
Yes, but yes, I know what you're saying, because it took, he first had the prophecy dream.
He had to live like animals in the wild.
He had to go through everything, which also just tells you the character of Christ. That he is not going to give up on you. Mm-hmm. And at the end, he knew that Nebuchadnezzar would glorify God. Mm-hmm. At the end of his days, he humbled himself and he proclaimed that there is one true God and you are him. And God just kept working at him. He needed a lot of work, but he got there. So God is not one to give up on us, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And that's also with the things that he lets us go through.
Yes.
Always
for refinement.
Us glorifying him.
Yeah. Which brings
us closer.
Brings us closer. Your struggle is
everything.
Not. Yeah, it's there for your refinement.
Mm-hmm. And even if at the start you're like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, at the end, nope. And he sees it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, what a God we serve, hey?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for coming on.
No problem.
This was so good. We loved talking with you. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for listening.
All for Jesus.
All for Jesus.